Well, we're going to start. I want to call the meeting to order and then turn it over to Dr. Kabelski to give us start the debriefing on the state board meeting.
Good evening, everyone. Dr. Kobilski here for those of you that are watching from home. The purpose of this meeting today is to debrief the information that was shared with us last Thursday, June 11th, at the Department of Education meeting, knowing that we have a return appearance scheduled in front of the Department of Education again on August 5th. And I thought the best way to proceed is simply to at least start with a review of the executive summary that is written and presented to the State Board of Education by Amy Williamson, and that document has been provided to you in your packets on board docs. And if you could locate that, it begins with the Davenport Community School District conditional accreditation process. It discusses the items, the legal citation, the corrective action, due dates for completion, priorities that have been set both by the state as well as the school district, the status of each one of these citations as of June, and then any notations that were made by the Department of Education. So does everyone have that document available for viewing in front of them? Okay, sounds great. What I was hoping to do, and again, this is an important piece because when I came on board in August, it was made patently clear to me by the Department of Education through the DE meetings that we were having with their board is that the work with the Department of Education and the Davenport School District was a collaborative process, and I've seen that all year long. I also came to realize very early on that this was a process that was going to take some time. It was not an event, and that it was eminently unlikely that we were going to be given our accreditation back after just 1 year's worth of work. And if you take a look at that document, I'll just give you an example. So for example, item number 1 talks about teacher evaluation and establishing criteria, reviewing teacher files, and making sure that we complete formal evaluations for our teachers. This past August, the Department of Education came in, reviewed our files, not only for the teacher piece. If you look a little farther down, there's administrative evaluation for number 2. But please notice the dates of August 2019 and then June of 2019. So we knew from the very beginning this was going to be a 2-year process. We were told at the very beginning after this August visit of 2019 that we passed that particular litmus test. The Department of Education also came in this past February and took a look at our personnel files, and we were not made aware of any issues that they had at that time, but we knew that this coming June that we were going to have them take another look at our personnel files. And again, I'm just using this particular citation as an example to walk people through the process and how we work things. Now, you'll notice the June notes that essentially state as a result of COVID-19, they're extending the requirement for June, and that is going to change until August. So as you work your way through this document, you'll see, for example, items that say that we're working, but then also I would like to draw your attention as a school board to the items such as item number 4, item number 5, 7, 8, 9, as you go through that sheet, that show that the citations that were originally issued for the 2019-2020 school year were completed. One of the things that I took away from the board meeting, the state board meeting last Thursday, was a sense from that Board of Education, a sense of impatience. I'm just going to be honest with you that it didn't appear as though Davenport was making progress anywhere along the way. And when you take a look at the accreditation plan that was developed for 2020 and 2021, all those completed items were taken off. So you didn't get to see the successes that came along the way. There's another document also that I think describes the work that's been done over the course of the last year, our interaction with the Department of Education, and the feedback that we've been getting from the Department of Education. So, Joe Price, would you be so kind as to pull up the screenshot of that CASA information that I forwarded to you. So if you have an opportunity to look at this, this is also something that was shared with the Board of Education. This is a screenshot of what is referred to as the CASA system. It's the mechanism, the communication mechanism by which the Board of Education and school districts exchange information and communicate with each other. And if you take a look at this particular screenshot, it lists all of the citations that are on the document that I first started describing for you, beginning with the teacher evaluation piece. Now, they're a little out of order here, but essentially they're on the CASA system by date. So what we do is we submit either required documents or information to the state, and then the state reviews that information, and then they either give us the all clear or they give us something that wasn't done, or if they need more information, or if something was done wrong. So for example, in the CASA system for the past year, this is the communication link that we've had with the Department of Education. And if you look at it from a citation perspective, you'll see there's a lot of green there. The first three items, the first refers to peer review, and then we talk about equal employment opportunity and affirmative action and placement decisions. We have submitted information to the state, and that's sitting in the hands of someone at the state level ready for action on that. But if you continue to work yourself down the CASA citation list, and you go all the way to the right-hand side, and you could pick any one of these: teacher evaluation that I was just reviewing for you, administrative evaluation, all of the citations that were listed in this initial document that Amy Williamson and the DE and the district jointly negotiated heading into this school year. You'll see that the vast majority of those items have been completed successfully in terms of it shows closed at the end. That's a good sign. That means that we accomplished and did what we were asked to do and what we were expected to do. The final four items, which vary in their complexity and also vary in the topics, such as having a national expert come in and helping us work with MTSS and behavioral systems. Those last four items are really related to the state asking us to hit the pause button on a couple topics. The most prominent being the PBIS piece. It wasn't as though we weren't willing or able to move forward, but in consultation with the state, it was jointly determined that these dates would change and that we would revamp some of our work. So for example, you perhaps heard at the state board meeting last Thursday the notion of taking PBIS, knowing that we have to have a hard restart for PBIS, but at the same time making sure that safety and security of our students is paramount, knowing that's one of our top priorities as a district. And as a result, that particular citation was altered. So what I wanted to do with this information to start with is at least to show you, our community, and didn't have the opportunity really to do this with the State Board of Education, because I certainly don't want anyone getting the impression that we've been sitting on our hands, that we haven't been compliant, that we haven't been working diligently to try and accomplish everything that's been asked of us from a citation perspective. And I think this document shows the effort, and it shows the success that we've had along the way. Let me stop there for a moment and say I fully acknowledge as the superintendent, and we all do, and from a board perspective all the way through the organization, that we still have a great deal of work to do. I knew very early on when I accepted this job 10 months ago that it was going to take some time to get some of the cultural aspects of the district. And when I say cultural, I mean organizational culture. Mindsets, pieces like that need to change, and that takes a little bit of time. But we certainly had some structural pieces that we were able to change and have some very legitimate success with along the way. So while I do have a sense of urgency with everything that we're trying to accomplish, I do share the Department of Education's sense of urgency. I do understand a level of frustration that perhaps Davenport isn't making the progress that they would like to see. But I would be remiss if I didn't point out that a lot of good work has taken place, at least over the 10 months that I've been overseeing this particular work, with the teamwork that has taken place, and the fact that these citations have been going well. There is really nothing, I've never had any feedback from anyone at the DE that we are not in any way conforming to their expectations in terms of the work that we do, the processes that we have engaged, and I thought we've had a very good relationship. I also felt the same way when Ms. Williamson was here on the Monday before the DE meeting, and she was kind enough to spend almost an entire hour with the Board of Education answering questions with regard to next year's accreditation plan. And we were all under the assumption that the work that was done, and that what you're seeing on this CASA screen was the work that was done for this year, and some of that work needed to translate into the following year. So for example, the teacher evaluations, the teacher peer review piece, the administrator evaluations, and a whole host of others, even though we accomplished everything that we were supposed to accomplish in 2019, we knew the state was coming back in 2020 to take another look, and we anticipated that. So you're seeing that. So if you scroll, Joe, I'm going to have you pull that CASA piece off the screen, please. And I'm going to direct the Board of Education's attention to, again, the June 11th executive summary that was prepared by Ms. Williamson. So again, it started with the current plan that we're operating under, but then again, put together a brand new plan, reoriented some of the items from last year's plan, and placed in some brand new information. Now, what you see in this new document for next year is you don't see the green boxes. You don't get the sense of the progress that was made last year when you take a look at the accreditation process, or when you take a look at the CASA information. At first glance, looking at the 2020-2021 accreditation plan, it certainly gives the appearance that perhaps we're starting from ground zero, from scratch, starting all over again. But the point that I was trying to make with the information I've shared so far is we've been working very hard for well over a year now. Much of this groundwork was laid during the transition with our interim superintendent that allowed us to have what I think was demonstrated success, knowing that we do have some issues that we certainly have to work through, and they're very important issues, and they're high-profile issues. We've talked as a board about disproportionality. We know we have to resolve that issue. We've talked as a board and as an administrative team, as a district, with regard to safety and security. We know that's something that we have to really roll up our sleeves and work hard on. So please don't interpret anything that I'm saying that there's no mission accomplished sign here. It's mission ongoing, and we certainly have some heavy lifting to do. But when Ms. Williamson was here on Monday, she went through the 2020-2021 accreditation plan and answered all the questions from the board. There were no surprises from my perspective. I knew, based on the previous year's work, what lies ahead of us for the next school year. And at no time during that meeting on Monday, the 8th, that I get the impression that there was such a heightened level of impatience with the Department of Education board as was exhibited last week, Thursday. And whether that was a miscalculation on my part or I misinterpreted something, I would apologize for that, but I certainly didn't get that sense. So now fast forward from our Monday meeting with Amy to the Department of Education meeting, and everything was going in a manner remarkably similar to the conversation that we were having with our board on Monday. And where I think things went a little bit sideways as Ms. Williamson was explaining the citations and the work that needed to be done with the Davenport Community School District, one of the DE board members asked and noticed in the document that there were multiple references to national experts and mentors. And evidently, somewhere along the way, and I couldn't pinpoint the date or when this happened because I was not privy to this information, but evidently a decision was made by the Department of Education that mentors and national experts were no longer going to be part of a funding plan when it came to supporting not only Davenport, but school districts from around the state. If I'm misstating that, I'll be happy to make a clarification, but that's the impression I got from reading between the lines of the DE meeting from last week, Thursday. The answer to the question was, if we're not if we, the State Department of Education and the state school board, are no longer paying for these consultants and national experts, can we require the Davenport School District to pay for these experts in this information and knowledge? And the answer that was given was, if you want to require the district to hire a certain person or to make payments to certain mentors and experts, that we would have to move from the second tier of accreditation to the third tier, which would be some form of operational control being taken by the state to do that, where the state would then have the ability to direct a district such as ours to pick a particular mentor, pay for that mentor. And without moving to that third level status, they would not have the opportunity to do that. So that's where the conversation really started going in a completely different direction than the one that we had on Monday. And it was the first time that I got the sense that that as a district, we would be paying for these things. It didn't surprise me knowing, how the world is working out, but certainly having heard that for the very first time that Thursday, I was more than willing to have a conversation with the state as to what that would look like. Following that, things devolved even a little bit further with regard to the data that was presented to the state school board regarding school safety and the survey that was administered to our students, and a concern that November was far too distant a time frame to ensure the safety of and security of our students and our staff heading into the beginning of a school year. And the state board wanted to see steps, not a plan, that would take effect on the first day of school, with the same goal that we have of making sure that our students are safe and they'll be able to focus their attention on their learning. I try to give a couple quick comments to the State Board of Education to let them know that we did have structures in place ready to go on the first day of school. And the end result of the conversation was that they would like us to present to them on August 5th what the school safety framework prevention and response plan looks like, what are the action steps that we have taken, and where are we going with that. So we're in the process as a school district and as an administrative team of preparing an actual presentation. But what I shared with the Board of Education in your packet today is an outline of the topics that we will be discussing in our presentation with the Department of Education and the Board of Education of the state of Iowa. So we'll go into great depth with regard to our work with positive behavioral interventions, our Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 supports. We have a number of embedded programs within those. One of the programs I tried to describe last week, Thursday, was a brand new program for the district, which is called Check and Connect. It's a program that is designed to mentor students who show signs of disengagement, who are increased risk of dropout, and students who are exhibiting problematic behaviors on a sustainable basis in our schools. It's a very comprehensive program. It involves a one-on-one mentor. It is very well researched. It's the only mentoring program that is endorsed by the What Works Clearinghouse, which vets all of these programs out there. And we're very excited. This started out with the University of Minnesota, and we've been working quite extensively with them to implement that program. We have already trained our mentors in how to work through that program. That's one example. The other important piece that I tried to emphasize with the Department of Education is we had a need in Davenport to build a continuum of behavioral services. Up until recently, we had very few options for students that were exhibiting behavioral issues. They would either get suspended, in some cases they were getting expelled, in some cases they were being moved off to Keystone, off-site in a program to try and remediate some of their issues, but we didn't have a very robust or extensive program in existence that allowed students to reintegrate back into our learning programs effectively so that they could be effective but also continue to monitor and ensure the safety of all of our students. So we've created a diversion program, which is a temporary placement for students that might be in crisis for whatever reason. We have a first level redirection program, which involves our interventions at our high schools. Both of those programs are rooted in Check and Connect, but the idea is to, have a restorative perspective with our students and be more aggressive with redirecting students back into our classroom. And then we have a second tier of redirection program that is really quite new for us in the sense that we're providing flexible scheduling for students. Students might not come to school during the same hours that that their program normally would have them associated with. They also have a team that's actually overseeing the work that they're doing with students, trying to redirect these students in a positive format. We have student support team departments that are working throughout all of our schools. All of those teams are designed to provide input and solicit solutions so that we can get to the root cause of the issues that our students are struggling with from a disciplinary perspective. We also have a crisis response and violence prevention team that is in place. We are going to re-engage our community conversation very soon, and as a matter of fact, in July we have a date that we have asked our community members to continue the work that we've been doing. We also know that we have to give very concrete direction and instructions to our staff on what to do for a major event, such as a fight or a disruption. There was some discontinuity across the district based on information that had been given over the years where teachers weren't exactly sure what they need to do. And we will be spending a lot of time when teachers return in August describing how to not only prevent issues from a tier 1 PBIS perspective, but also how to react to a situation that may be occurring right before your eyes, and what are the expectations for teachers, and how do we do things in a safe way where not only the teacher's safe, but also protecting students that are involved. We have a crisis prevention institute training where each building has a team that really is designed to really focus on the individual situations that are percolating within a particular building. We have credit recovery, we have mental health support systems that are in place for a district that are going to help eminently with our discipline issues. But then also from a safety and security standpoint, there are very specific structures that were designed to mitigate disruptive behaviors in our schools and to help mitigate those pieces. So for example, we still have our P3 anonymous tip line. We will make sure that it's easier for students and families to report incidents that we need to know about. We will, with our brand new website that is soon to be released, it'll be much easier to help students report bullying incidents and harassment incidents so that we can get on those much more quickly, and it's much easier for them to report. Keep in mind also that we've restructured our grades here. We've taken our 6th grade out of a middle school concept and kept our 6th grade in an elementary school. Our data has suggested to us that 6th grade discipline spikes within our system, and we believe that our students staying in their elementary school for 6th grade in a familiar environment with all the teachers and all the administrators and individuals in that building knowing their name and who they are will allow for the ongoing adolescent development in a way that's perhaps more constructive and conducive than the middle school model has proven. Plus, we're also taking down the number of students in a middle school. When you have a middle school with close to 1,000 students in there, it's a little bit difficult for 6th graders to assimilate to that environment because there is a big difference in terms of the development of a 6th grader and an 8th grader. And we believe that having 7th and 8th graders in a junior high as opposed to 6th graders, 7th graders, and 8th graders in a middle school will be one of those structural components that will help with discipline. Also, we've moved additional security to our junior highs and our high schools. We found a number of our elementary schools, while the security personnel there were helpful and they were forming relationships with students. We felt that student support liaisons who had even additional training with regard to building student relationships would be more appropriate at the elementary level. And as a result, we've increased our level of security with our private, I shouldn't say our private, our employee security firm, our security team in place. We've increased our camera capabilities to keep an eye on things within our buildings. And last but certainly not least, knowing that we have to have ongoing professional development with our teachers, knowing that positive instruction mitigates behavioral issues when students are engaged in their lesson, but also knowing that we have to have culturally responsive practices that are in place that are proactive and preventative in nature, and making sure our teachers have a robust toolbox to start the school year, and we intend to add to that toolbox and be of help to them. So that's the report that we will put in a more polished and presentable format for the State Board of Education, given their concern over safety and security in the district here. And it's a very legitimate concern, and I will certainly validate that. Fortunately, on August 5th, we'll have an opportunity to present this information to the state and share with them the work that's been done. So that's my overview and my executive summary and reflection as a result of the Department of Education meeting from Thursday. So I do know that they are actively considering moving from step 2 to step 3, which would be some form of state control over operations of the district. I don't know exactly what they have in mind for that, and I don't know what the scope and limitations they have in mind for that, but I'm hopeful that as they process the information that they have in front of them, they do realize that as a school district, we have an eminent group of individuals that are working very, very hard to make this the best district in the state of Iowa. We've had quite a bit of accomplishment along the way. We have a heck of a lot of work to do. We would certainly like to continue our partnership with the Department of Education. We will do everything that's been asked of us, as we have been all along the way. I would just ask that the Department of Education just help us make sure that our students are receiving the services that they need, and making sure that our employees have an understanding of what their role is and how this state is going to react to the information that was discussed last week, Thursday, because it has been somewhat demoralizing for the individuals that I've talked to coming off of that meeting on Thursday, and I hope that we can turn that sentiment around. I know a number of board members participated, and I know Dan and Allison in particular had an opportunity to speak at the board, state board meeting. Most of the other board members were able to plug in and listen to most of that, but that is my commentary. I think it would be appropriate, Mr. President, if we heard the perspective of other board members, and then after that, I'd be happy to answer any questions with regard to any of the information that I presented this evening.
Dan, you want to chime in?
I can do that. I think the superintendent's being pretty polite on it. It was a very, very bad meeting. I mean, it went like a complete 180. One of the state board members, it's a political thing for him because he was a legislator and the students wore the "I'm worthless" t-shirts. He mentioned that at least 3 times that I counted. They were more along the lines that we as a board, we do not get enough information when we vote on things, which is true. I mean, I've been saying that for multiple years, so I'm hoping we can get better at that, and as a board, we need to start demanding that. The other thing I will say, I've been trying to speak about a lot of this stuff, and I know like at our last meeting, a few board members, they wanted to only focus on return to learn. Well, I got to tell you, I never heard return to learn come up once to the state board meeting. All they cared about was us getting these citations fixed, and we are not moving fast enough. I mean, I don't know how more serious I can say that. They want to come in and take control of our district. I mean, they flat out said it. I think there was a parent or two that spoke during their open forum that are not happy with our district. And one thing I was going to ask was to see what information we have on bullying. How many reports have we had on bullying within the last year? So hopefully we can get something like that, because the state board made it sound like half of our students are afraid to go to school. And I don't know if that's just the way that the survey was worded or whatever. I I think they're over our board, to be honest with you, because we haven't stepped in enough to say that we need some serious changes done. I think as a district, we have not accepted a lot of things. We talk about it. We talk a really good game, but we do not back a lot of this stuff up with actions. I think that we need to start seriously looking into what improvements we can do, and we got to do it sooner and later. And I mean, Dr. Grabilski's being generous. They wanted this information in July, and Amy Williamson said, hey, we're working on the return to learn plan. Can you push it off till August? Because they wanted it like right now, this for the school safety stuff. And that should be something that we should be working on. Disproportionality, I understand other things come up. I get that, but we still have stuff that we got to do, and we haven't been doing it. We've been putting it on the back burner, and I think as a district and as a board, I think we don't think it's as serious as it is. And it is absolutely serious. I wish the rest of the board could have been on that meeting. It was very uncomfortable sitting there listening to it, to the point where I had to ask if I could talk, to let them know the board members were starting to be more involved. We're trying to help with change. We're trying to do things, but I hope it's not too little too late. And when we ask for things, we need to start getting that. We got to be a team, and we got to work together and get this stuff done. But when we're asking information, it's not for no reason. We absolutely have to start getting this stuff. I mean, they're watching our meetings. I'm sure they're watching right now, to see how this discussion goes. But I don't want to downplay anything. It was a very serious meeting, and they were very upset with us. I mean, and rightfully so. So we really got to roll up the sleeves and start dabbing in and have the uncomfortable conversations and start moving forward. We have to get past, this is the reason for this, that, or the other. I really don't care. I just want to move forward from this. One other question I'm going to ask is if we can get information on lawsuits against the district. I know we normally get that, but how many have been dismissed because there was no validity to it, and how many were we found guilty of? So we got a benchmark on that, because the way that some of these parents are saying is we're doing a lot of bad things, so I would think we'd be getting sued and losing. So maybe we can try to figure that out and start. We need to be a part of the change. We need to quit talking about everything, and we need to have some action. I mean, it was a bad meeting. I hope everybody was able to listen to it. But it's completely different listening to it versus being there in the moment. I don't even think Dr. Kabilski got to talk very much. I know I maybe talked for 5-10 minutes, or it seemed like forever. Allison had talked as well. We were trying to give our perspective that, hey, we are trying to do things here. So I cannot stress how serious this is, and we have to start taking it serious, and we have to, I guess, be more involved, because that's kind of what it sounded like they're wanting. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll let Allison talk about her perspective on it. But
Allison, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I wasn't sure if my headphones were working. It was not a pleasant situation. It was tough, but I think it was something that we needed to hear. We do need to work faster, or maybe more strategically. I think the state had a legitimate complaint that, we initially got these citations and nothing happened. And that was under a previous superintendent. So I tried to make the case that we're under new leadership. We've got new board members, new board president, and the board is functioning better than it was. But I think it's hard to express that we do take this seriously when they don't see us very often. They see Dan, they see Bruce at meetings. I've been able to pop in on Zoom pretty regularly. But I think, one of the things I walked away thinking was it would have been nice if more board members had dialed into the meeting. Now, we didn't know it was going to go the way it did necessarily. And it was clear, as Dan said, to me, that there's some things that people at the state are upset with that I personally think are in the past. They're not things that we could fix. They're things that happened in the past, and very few people on the board now were even in these positions at that point. But as far as making a cultural shift and really getting our hands dirty on disproportionality, that's really what we need to be working on now. And I made the point on Monday night, I think, with our committee of the whole. I made it again with the state. You know, we are doing some of these things. We need to make sure that we give them explicit lists of the things that we are doing, timelines when we're doing them. I have a few suggestions for the school safety framework that I think would enhance our presentation to the state. You know, they really just don't want to see any more plans. They feel like they've been seeing plan after plan after plan. And so I echo what Dan said. It was really uncomfortable. It was hard to listen to, but the state board made a lot of really good points that we need to make some serious changes. But we also have made a lot of progress, and I don't want to downplay the fact that, you know, we've changed a lot in just 10 months. We've seen changes in the central office, which are huge. Different people heading human resources, for example, and in our special education department. So I don't want to downplay the fact that I also think that we have made some significant moves in the right direction. But the ones that the state feels like are the sort of biggest, deepest problems, they're systemic and they're not unique to Davenport. But the disproportionality is something that we really need to demonstrate active movement on. And having professional development isn't going to be sufficient, I don't think. Just having professional development 1 year or just bringing in experts once or twice. And I know I've mentioned this before in the past when we've had conversations. How are we going to sustain these changes? What are we doing to make sure that as new people come on as teachers, they get the same training that our prior teachers or that we're doing now? So it was a rough listen. Like I said, I didn't agree with everything they said. I don't think, I felt like the comment about half our students, they made it sound like a lot of our students are afraid to go to school, and I would argue against that. I send my son to school, and I don't think that he feels unsafe. But I know that some kids do, and any kid feeling unsafe is one too many. So we do have a lot of work to do. I think what I'd like the board to do is, as Dan suggested, be more involved. What we were doing, being involved with the Return to Learn plan. We all know what's going on right now because we were involved in that. Even if it's just getting a weekly update, or it's not our job to get into the weeds, but it is our job to make sure that we are getting the information we need to make the decisions that guide us in the right direction. So I think that sums up my perspective there.
Thank you. Any questions for the superintendent concerning his overview? I have one. Do you know, Dr. Kabelski, did the state board see that chart that you had put up for us to look at that was kind of in tiny print? That had all the numbers of citations that had been already cleared?
I don't believe so. That's in that CASA system, which is a digital system, and it's the communication between the actual DE administration and the school administration. I don't believe that rises to the level of the Board of Education of the state. I could be wrong. All that really is, though, Mr. President, is it's just a more detailed look at the correction action plan from this year that was in the executive summary that Amy Williamson provided to her board. So they did see the accreditation process, and they were able to see those green boxes. But again, I wanted to make sure that we had an emphasis of the fact that, yes, there's a great deal of work to do on some heavy lifting items, but we've put a great deal of effort into trying to be compliant and to get this district on the right track. So that was the impetus for me sharing that. But I don't believe they actually saw that CASA piece that I shared with you as a board.
My thought would be that would at least convey to them that there's been some significant progress on dealing with correcting things that they discovered that we needed to correct. And granted, as Allison said, the bear in the room is the disproportionality, because the root of that infects everything. It infects our special ed. It infects discipline. It infects academic achievement, on and on and on. But as they have said in the past, that changing that to proportionality is a long-term systemic process. Yeah, you just can't. It's not like, oh, did you evaluate all the administrators by the end of June? Yes, no, boom, done. This involves physical changes, cultural changes, emotional changes. It involves the district, the schools ameliorating things for kids because of their home life, because of their upbringing, because of their circumstances of their parents, because of economic troubles, because of any one of a number of things. And you just can't say, okay, this is the magic wand.
Mr. President, I would echo those comments because
I'm giving a speech and not asking a question.
well, I appreciate that. And when you take into consideration disproportionality and discipline and safety, let's be honest, we haven't spent any time on student achievement. We've talked about it a little bit, and I've been here for 10 months, and I'm just flabbergasted at the limited amount of time that we have as an organization from a board perspective to really dig into that. And that's something that we heard from the Department of Education also. Remember, that is our mission. Student achievement is our mission. And all these other important attributes that contribute to our mission, which is positive behaviors and making sure that we have access and equity squared away as a district. There are mechanisms to get us there, and we're committed to getting us there. I think the final thought that I have in this process, and again, I think it'd probably be good to hear from other board members just what their thoughts are, because I think everyone has pretty much listened into the audio, at least, of that piece. But one of the things I shared with my leadership team yesterday morning was just my personal private observation. Over the course of the year, I sensed a little bit of organizational hesitancy to be aggressive on taking the initiative. There was almost a sentiment of, well, is the state going to be okay with this, or do we have to wait for the state to approve this? Do we need their permission to do this? And I told my team on Monday, I said, one of my takeaways from the Thursday meeting with the folks in Des Moines was, as a school district, we have to take the bull by the horns here, and we've got to get moving on this. And we are going to bring in the experts that are going to help us with disproportionality, frame the work that needs to be done. I agree with Allison completely. It's not professional development and in-service in the traditional sense of the terminology. We have to implement an integrative, comprehensive system that allows us to eradicate disproportionality. And it's a systems approach to doing that. There are people that I've worked with in previous districts that have helped me move a district beyond disproportionality and move towards culturally responsive, equity-based practices that not only solve discipline issues, but really get to the heart of the matter of achievement gaps and academic issues. So I told the team on Monday, I said, we're moving, and I'm not going to wait for the Department of Education to either say yes or no. I think we need to be more proactive. I think we need to be more aggressive as a school district and have our own sense of urgency and not, look over our shoulder at our partner to say, well, is it okay if we do this? Or are you sending your team to do? No, it's time for us to take control of this and do it right and do it well. We have the capacity as a school system to do it. We have brilliant people working in this district. We just need to organize that work, as Allison said, in a strategic way so that we get this accomplished sooner rather than later. And that's the end of my soliloquy.
I have 2 questions, if I may.
Go ahead.
Okay. Number 1, have we heard or have you had a conversation with Amy Williamson, a debrief with her from this after Thursday? Did you have a conversation with her at all? I guess that's for Dr. K.
We had an electronic conversation where her basically the gist of it was that the Department of Education wants to help us with our presentation for August 5th.
Okay. And then I guess, well, I was just going to say I'll send my suggestions via email for things that I think could help with that document that I think the state, wants to see. I think they really want some specifics, timelines, amount of time spent on this task versus that task, how many people it's going to take, that kind of thing. So I'll let somebody else talk. Thanks.
Karen, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, just a couple of things. As I listen to it, the cost, and I understand everybody with all this going on has a reduced budget, but they hammered us about cost, and now they're going to shift the cost of bringing in these experts and things, and it's like, we don't grow manufacture money here. And we have cut so many things that it's hurting. I mean, high class sizes, well over 30 in some high school classes and things. I mean, we aren't sitting here with piles of money, but you're going to say, you have to bring these in and you have to pay for it. I was like, oh, okay. When you hammered on us on money. One board member made the comment, oh, this is just like a Swiss Army knife cut versus a machete. I disagree. When there was any talk of that number 3, I felt like a machete had just cut me off at the knees. I was like, whoa. Is there any chance of, I'm one of these people, I like to look at things once or twice, 3 times, process it, that we could get them our safety plan, which I think would outline, look, we are doing things sooner than the meeting, so that they can look at it and not have to just look at it and make a decision so they can process it. I don't know how that works with them. And 2 other things. Amy's comment was, well, we did kind of step back on some of these things because we can't keep dumping on teachers. 100% agree. This district has a long history of, we'll just do more and more and more, and we never offload anything. So there's got to be things out there that we can go, oh, not working, not using it. For a while there, instead of PBIS, I was in a school with PBIS. Then all of a sudden it became a Davenport way, which is, I'm not even going to comment on that, but now we're back to PBIS. We just keep, like the duck underwater. So there's got to be things we can offload. I believe the safety plan, we've got some good things to put in place, but what are we going to take away to not just put one more thing on their plate? And my last question actually is, if they would go to number 3, what's the role of the school board in this? Because it sounds like they could direct us where we spend money. I thought that was our job. And I'm done.
Well, I think from what I heard in the conversation, and I didn't get a chance to finish the whole conversation, okay? Because I don't know if Davenport was all the way to the end, but I've got about 20 minutes left or 15 minutes left to listen to. But I got the impression in that conversation they were having that they didn't know exactly what it was going to look like. Or because I was at the part where they were trying to come up with a motion, and they were struggling mightily to come up with words to put something in a motion to even consider that third step. So I have a feeling, since there's nothing specific in code, that the good part is it could be minimal. The bad part is it could be as much as they think they can chew on. My hope is that the employees of the state board will help educate the state board a little bit on what the consequences are, the commitment is if you cross that line and start making decisions that are going to cost treasure for a school district, especially, as you pointed out, Karen, one that has been under the gun by another state board for its spending habits. I don't know if that answers the question or not, but I mean that's what I was hearing from them. There was this, it was almost like a fool's rush in, and then, well, what is it really going to look like? Well, I don't know. Well, maybe they back up the truck a little bit. Somebody's going to have to give them some guidance, because remember, the state board, in my understanding, State Board of Education, are appointed. They're political appointees, half by the governor, half by the legislature, and they have some experience in education, yes, but not
Yep.
in maybe actually running a large school district. Allison.
I was just going to say two things. One, it was clear that the law in Iowa is somewhat vague, and Amy Williamson made that clear that the board would have to decide what that item 3 or option 3 would look like if they chose to go that route, and that's why they decided not to do anything immediately. And number 2, my second point is that there were a couple of board members, and I didn't catch who it was, but said, I've been in districts where the state took over and it actually made things worse. Or
Yep.
We've never done anything like this before. We need to be extraordinarily cautious with this item 3. And so I think, Bruce, the way you described it a little bit, is accurate, sort of okay, let's look at this. But then the more it was discussed, the more it became clear that it's a little bit more complicated than just, it's not a yes or no. Which is
it's not like we'll send Louis down there and he'll straighten them out.
Yeah, there's not a cleaner, so to speak. So that's why we're taking this time. But I think, Karen, you had a good point in that, if we can send some of this stuff ahead of time, if we have it, why not? If people don't look at it, fine. But at least we are ahead of the game. We're being proactive. We're sending information that they clearly wanted but didn't have, before they're asking for it, right? Or before the deadline, I should say.
Linda, do you have anything, please?
I do. I've agreed a lot of things that have been said, but one thing that I did notice here, there are enough bright people in our district. It's almost like whatever the flavor of the day is, that we hop on that. We work diligently at that. But there's enough people that I feel that we could split these duties. Just now in listening to the conversation, we've been talking about disproportionality. We've been talking about the bullying, and that's something that I've been talking about for quite some time, but you have to have a certain something or other to happen before it's measured. It can't just go on a ceiling, but when you have 50% of our students dealing with this, there's an issue, and it's more than a ceiling. Just a little bit ago in the conversation, we're dealing with, the conversation was going and flowing on disproportionality. Then it flips up and it turns, well, student achievement is our goal. And you're right, student achievement is our major goal, but they run hand in hand. Student achievement will never take place if we're not getting to the root of the problem and trying to fix what's going on. We can discuss it over and over again and spin our wheels and never get anywhere, but it's almost like we jump from one raft to the other, and we have to get, our team, like now, there's over 100 people on the Return to Learn plan because that's the sense of urgency today. Whereas if we split those up and took 50 of them and put them on one of our other major projects, I feel that we can at least make some headway. Going through the list, there, a lot of cases had been closed, but there were 4 things still open. Just because we're told, well, this is not a primary focus today, we can't lose focus of that because it's an issue. If it were not an issue, it would never have been brought to our attention. I'm not saying by any means that the state is setting us up for failure. However, if we have a list of citations that we need to work through, we need to work through those citations for our own peace of mind. It may not be a sense of urgency for you right now, but you pointed it out to us. Let us work to fix that and make that better. There's an entire list we need to go through, and somehow we just need to take the big bite versus the little bite and split up our teams and work together. And I'm sure we're going to have to do something. I don't know what it is exactly, but we're going to have to do something, maybe confer with each other and allow other opinions to get in there and get it sorted out. But we can't just jump from this thing to that thing because we're here in mid-June now. School's 2 months away. These things have to be lined up. And I don't know who it is, or possibly Tom. What exactly is our role duty? At one point we were getting in the weeds too much, but it sounds like backing up away from the weeds, we've got ourselves in the line of fire for what we're not doing when we're told that we shouldn't do it, and now we should be doing it. So we have to aggressively make sure that these things are done. I don't know if right now is a good time where we should be down to 2 meetings a month because there's a lot of things going on. Dr. K is open that we can email, text, or whatever whenever need be, but right now, as critical as the situation is that we're working with, I feel that we probably need to go back to our first, second, and fourth because there's not a lot of time here that we have to work on these things, and we're not wanting to set ourselves up for someone to come in and take our district. Because if I took over Bruce's, your bank account, I have no idea what's going on with that. Will I spend the way you spend and make sure things happen, or do I have a haphazard approach because I'm not prioritizing? We're not wanting that to happen to us. We need to buckle down and make it happen. And it's going to be stressful for everybody involved. But I agree, I'm not sure who said it, just like the Return to Learn, that we need to get on these various teams to make sure that these things are taking place. We have to get it done. Right now, it's not optional. And that's all I have to say for right now.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Kent?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I appreciate all the comments from the board members. It definitely shows the passion from the board members. And I did log on to that meeting, but when I saw how far behind they were on the agenda, I had another commitment, so I wasn't able to sit in on it. So Allison and Dan, I appreciate you being involved with that. I've listened to part of it. I haven't got through all of it yet. I guess my thought is, ever since November when came on the board, it seems like all we've been doing is putting out fires. We had the financial crisis that we had to work through, and it was just one thing after another. But we do have to realize that we're much better off than we were a year ago at this time. And yes, like Dan said, we've got a long ways to go, and there's a lot staring us in the face. But again, we've worked our way through a number of citations. I think for me, special ed, that's a big area that we've got to address, and with the new hiring of a new director for that, hopefully that will turn that around. I still feel, and again, it's all about putting out fires, but we can't ignore the return to learn, because if we don't get that right, that just compounds some of these other problems that we're talking about. So, let's get that right, and then let's hit it hard on some of these other citations. And maybe there's so many citations there that we're spreading ourselves so thin, trying to address every one. And like Dan and Allison mentioned, maybe we just need to focus on 2 or 3, really hit them hard and get those out of the way. Pick your top 2 or 3 and really work hard on that. But, when you go through the list and, some are completed, some are on hold, some we're currently working on, we can only spread our people so thin, whether it's the staff, the teachers, but, sitting in on these committee meetings, I'm just so impressed with the staff and how they've jumped on this and how hard they're working at it. And again, these are the people that are going to be involved on some of these citations and helping work through that. But you can only spread these people so thin, and you don't want to burn them out. So I agree with what everyone said. And again, I appreciate your passion. But yes, there has to be a focus, but I think let's kind of narrow that focus down and really hit the top 2 or 3 things that we need to work on, and then go from there.
Okay. Anyone else want to share anything?
Mr. President,
Dan, go ahead.
I'll kind of add to what Director Posham was talking about. I think the biggest thing that the state is looking for, and anybody correct me if I'm wrong, but they want to see, and I've been pushing this for 10 months, strategic plans. I think they want to see hard, we're trying to do this, this is our timeline, boom, boom. I think they want to actually see something on paper so they can hold us accountable to that. I understand people have plans and everything else, but if it's not out there with timelines, a way to hold people's feet to the fire, I think that's one of the biggest things that they're looking for. I mean, we can say we're doing everything in the world, but if I just think that's what they're looking for a comfort to them. And I do want to say, at the state board meeting, they did say, June 30th, they're cutting off all funding for any supports or whatever. And the new director of the Department of Ed is not for providing any supports for anybody, helping with the pay on that. So we got to figure out a way, because I think we could still utilize Tom Lane. He's been working pretty good with the board and the superintendent. I think we need to find a way to be able to still utilize these people. I mean, Amy Williamson and the Department of Ed have been helping out, and actually Amy kind of went to bat for us quite a bit during that meeting and got it pushed out to August, and and said that we've been working together and stuff like that. But I think for the state board, I think that's what they want to see. They want to see some kind of plan. This is what we're going to do. This is how many days it's going to take us to do it, whatever the case may be. And that's all I've been pushing for like 10 months. But again, it's one of those things I feel like I have to battle to get things done, when we got to start working together and just putting this stuff out, have our collaboration and get it done. I mean, we got to start putting our feet to the fire and getting this stuff done. I mean, we have to. Disproportionality, that's going to be a long-term thing. That's not something that's happening overnight. The first biggest hurdle is acknowledging it, and having a real conversation about it. It's going to be uncomfortable, I can guarantee you that. In my line of work, we have to do that stuff, and it's not fun. But I think we got to roll our sleeves up and really get into this stuff. But I think they want hard dates, hard timelines on things we're doing. Like I said, when I ask for things, I'm not just asking for it on a whim. It's because from listening and sitting back and taking everything in, it's the things that they're looking for. And as long as we can provide them with that, I think we'll be a little bit better off, because we're not trying to butt heads with them. We're, hey, all right, we're acknowledging we did these things, we failed, and here's our plan to get better. I think that's one of the biggest things. No one wants to bite the bullet, and I understand that, but I'm more than willing to do that. I said it at the state board meeting. We just have to start taking responsibility for things to do it. And I'm glad the superintendent said, we're not going to wait for the state on things. And that's good. We shouldn't. We should be well ahead of anything that they bring down. If they're asking for something, we should be ahead of that. Give them our plan for the safety, ahead of time. So if they have issues or questions, they can get them back, and then we can critique it and work from there rather than wait until the last minute. And I understand things take time, but we have to do something to get better at getting the stuff out sooner so it can be reviewed. Because, like all of us, we have questions about things, but when you get it at the last minute, and I get that stuff, we are dealing with a lot of things. We are. But we have to find a common ground where we can all work together and move forward from everything.
Thank you, Dan. Anyone else? Dr. Gbelski, you got anything you want to add?
No, I just want to thank you for calling this meeting. I think it's important to process what we heard last week, and I don't disagree with anything that I've heard this evening. We're going to get very aggressive. We are going to prove to the world that we have a sense of urgency, and we are going to get to the root causes of the issues, and we're going to do that sooner rather than later. You have my word on that.
Okay. There's nothing else. I want to thank everybody for participating. It was good conversation again. Last few meetings, we've had some very good conversations, and I think that's important, especially when most of our meetings we're not there in person to see each other. But that'll end starting Monday. So I look forward to seeing everyone, literally seeing everyone, on Monday. With that said, this meeting is adjourned.